Here we go. The Cardinals and Cubs each have 25 games left. With a 3-game lead, anything could happen. Let's dig in. All right, like we said, the Cards have 25 and the Cubs have 25 games remaining. 15 games for the Cardinals before we match up against the Cubs in 7 out of the last 10. In those 15 games, the Cardinals play 3 against San Francisco, 3 at Pittsburgh, 3 at Colorado, 3 at home against Milwaukee, and 3 at home against Washington. So, starting out, those 3 series are considered soft teams. Milwaukee is kind of up in the air by then. It's still a good team, but it's hard to say if by then they might be eliminated and might start thinking about playing some bench guys or seeing some prospects. So we'll see. And then Washington, I think, is going to be a tough series as well. Now, in those last 10, like we said, we've got 4 at Chicago, 3 at Arizona, and we close out the season with a 3-game series at home against the Cubs. So that's definitely going to be a tough way to end the year. So let's look at what the Cubs got. They have 1 more against Seattle, 4 at Milwaukee. Now, like we said, they might be out of it by the time we play them, but they're going to play the Cubs first, and I think they'll still be competing, so that's good for us. Then they have 4 at San Diego, 3 against Pittsburgh, and 3 against Cincinnati. So the last 10 of those are kind of a soft schedule: San Diego, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati. Then they close out against 4 with St. Louis, 3 at Pittsburgh, and 3 at St. Louis. So, in my opinion, the Cubs have a little bit easier schedule, but they're both similar. It's just kind of how they round out. They face Milwaukee before we do, and very well could be the difference in how Milwaukee is playing those games. So, that last week, like we said, it's going to be tight. I think the Cardinals, are likely to still maintain some of a lead. They've got a 3-game lead right now, but, what will they have at that point? It's hard to say. I think it's entirely possible we could pad another 1 or 2 games, but you never know. And then going into those 7 games, that's a lot of head-to-head games against your currently second-place division rival. There definitely could be some leapfrogging going around. It's going to be exciting. It should be one of the best times to watch baseball heading into the playoffs. Speaking of exciting baseball, the Cardinals won 4 of 5 over the Labor Day weekend. We had 2 doubleheaders back-to-back, Saturday and Sunday, after the rain-out Friday. Colton Wong has really been the best, most consistent player. He has been hitting for average, for power, knocking in RBIs. He's advancing on the bases with his base running. He's hitting multiple triples. It's just, again, there's the word exciting. He's exciting to watch right now. I don't know if anybody would have predicted going into this season that he could possibly be our best player, but it's hard to argue for anybody else at this point. Ozuna maybe had that case earlier in the year, but he's been in a slump lately. And same with Goldschmidt. But definitely, you got to look at what Wong does defensively night in and night out. He's making tremendous plays. He's been moved up in the order. He was kind of banished to that 7th or 8th spot in the order for so long, but he's been batting second a few times and has really just continued to do his part. He's not trying to do too much. That's what I see. He's not trying to pull it every time. He's hitting it the other way. He's pulling it when he needs to. He's getting home runs every now and again, but he's also, slapping singles and stealing second and just a little bit of everything. So very good to see Wong contributing in the way that he has. And, you're getting some value now on that $5 million a year contract that he signed. So good for him. Also, Adam Wainwright has been here he is in September, still pitching well. He had that one clunker in his last outing, or maybe it was 2 outings ago. I don't remember. But overall, he's been very good. His velocity is still up. His command is still there. He's keeping hitters guessing. He's just doing everything that he kind of has been doing all year. I for sure didn't expect that. I didn't expect him to be in the rotation after 3 or 4 starts. So for him to be continuing to do what he has done after the last couple seasons of mediocrity is very impressive. Can he continue it? It's hard to say. I think he will. He's not relying on insane velocity. He's really kind of topping out in 93. So can he continue to pitch 93? Probably. And even if he can't, he's still mixing in the off-speed stuff very effectively and hitting his spots. So as long as he can do that, he's going to be good. And, he's been, I don't know if he's been our most consistent pitcher. That's probably went to Dakota Hudson for a while. And for at least a month now, Jack Flaherty's been the best pitcher. But Wainwright has done his job, game in and game out. He's been better at home. And I think they will try to schedule him for home appearances as often as they can from here on out. But I think, we've all got to be pleased with what we've seen from Wainwright. So speaking of some of those decisions, you got to give Mike Shildt some credit for what this team has done. As much as, I think fans were quick to jump on Shildt when the team was struggling, you got to give him credit when they're doing well too. And I think he's made some of those decisions about who to play, who not to play, such as Matt Carpenter. He's not getting near as much playing time. He's not in the starting lineup tonight. And I'm sure that was a tough decision for the manager. I don't think it was tough for fans, but anytime you're taking a star, potentially all-star caliber player out of the lineup, you're bruising their ego. You're kind of admitting to your own management that the decision they made to extend him maybe wasn't the wisest decision. And you're saying that, saying as much on the field, but it had to be done. He wasn't getting it done. I think when the Cardinals were losing recently, he was a big reason for that. I think his not being in the lineup night in and night out is reason for them to is part of the reason that they have been playing better. So, you got to give the manager credit for having the guts to take him out of the lineup and put in a young, relatively unproven guy every night. So I also say the same thing with Bader. He could have easily banished Bader to the end of the bench, only put him in spot starts and only giving him a handful of innings. But to his credit, he's stuck with that hot hand, so to speak, the hot bat. Bader's been playing much better, not tearing it up exactly, but just contributing in all kinds of ways. Even if he's not getting a hit, he's running it out and forcing the defense to make the play, and sometimes they make an error. Or he's legging out, a single into a double, or scoring from first, or scoring from second. Again, forcing plays to be made. He's making some tremendous plays in the outfield, except for the one that he dropped. But, he's looked really good out there. Definitely been a difference maker in center. And him being in center has allowed Fowler to slide over to right, which is a benefit there to not have Jose Martinez or Jairo Munoz out there every night. So I think, Bader's presence has been a complete positive for the team. And that didn't have to be that way. Shildt could have said, well, I'm glad you're back, but you've proven that you're not an everyday player, so you'll get some playing time when I decide so. And to his credit, Shildt has been playing Bader plenty. And we've seen less of Munoz. I think for a while there, we were seeing way too much of Jairo Munoz. They were forcing him into the outfield to get his bat in the lineup, and it just wasn't working. And the statistics show that. So good for him for kind of realizing that wasn't working. Part of that is he's got better options now. Edman's playing better. Bader's playing better. Martinez is now back. Carp is back from the injury, but he's not quite right yet, but it does give you an option without having to force Munoz into the lineup. And honestly, it lets you have the flexibility of Munoz as a pinch hitter or, a spot start or, late game replacement, where I think is where he belongs. He doesn't need to be overexposed. And now Shildt is not doing that. He's made great decisions with the pitching staff, getting guys out early when they need to be, not keeping them in to try to pad their stats. He doesn't seem concerned about numbers at this point. It's all about W's. And they've been getting them recently. So good for the manager, good for the assistant coaches, the hitting coaches, everybody has been doing their part. I think we've got to give some credit at least to Jeff Albert. I don't know how much, if any, he has changed or made a difference with these guys with their late offensive surge, but it seems like something's clicking. At least their approach is a little bit different, and it's working. I'll take it. So I did want to compare all that positivity to a little bit of negativity. We got to mix it in somewhat, right? If you look at last season, in the month of August, if you recall, the Cardinals went on that insane 22-6 run in the month of August. Recently, after Schilt took over, they got all this motivation. They were playing great. Everybody loved the manager. He got his extension, etc. But the following month, September 1st through September 30th, they went 12-15, 3 games under 500. So after that insane run in August, they definitely had a major drop-off in September, and they missed the playoffs. So what can we expect this month? Now, they went 18-9 this past August, and if you discount those first few games where they, if you recall, they had the road trip out to Oakland and LA where they went 0-5. Since that 0-5 streak, they have been 17-4. So nearly, the same ratio as last August. So they went on a great run last August, a great run this August. They dropped off last September, and now the question remains, what will they do this September? Is there any reason to think that they're going to drop off again, or any reason to think that they won't? I do think we have reason to think that they won't. I do think we could look at Wainwright and say he is likely to sustain what he's been doing. I think the same for Flaherty. As good as he was last year, he started to struggle late in the season, but he's only looked better and better as this season has gone on. He sort of struggled earlier and has gotten better now. Again, you never know. His next start might be awful, but it's likely that Flaherty will continue to do what he's done. I would say Dakota Hudson is a little bit of a question mark. He's unproven this late into the season. He struggled a little bit last year after looking really good in the middle of the summer. I think Goldschmidt and Ozuna have been in a funk for, 20 or so at bats. And I think it's likely that they will get out of that. Both those guys were kind of on a tear for an extended stretch before that. So this is probably a short little funk. And over the next month, I would expect them to get out of that. And that should help everybody else in the lineup as well. Like we said, Colton Wong's approach has been much better. And I think based on his approach, his style of hitting, it's likely that he will sustain that. If he was doing what he has always done, which is try to pull everything, try to kill it and hit for the home run, if he had been having success with that, I would say it's unlikely to sustain it just because of that style of hitting. But what he's doing, hitting the ball everywhere, all over the field, not necessarily for power, hitting for average, though he does have some power in there, it's more likely to be able to sustain that. And just kind of the overall run. The team right now looks like a good defensive team, a good pitching team, a good base stealing team. And that kind of baseball, that brand of baseball, so to speak, is much easier to sustain success than it is a good offensive team. An offensive team can be shut down by good pitching, and even good defense to an extent can negate or offset a good offensive team. That being said, I don't think our offense is bad. It's just not our hallmark right now. And I think that's a good thing. You want your pitching and your defense to be what keeps you in games, and then your offense is able to kind of do whatever it needs to get the win. And that's what we've been seeing. So to me, it's a much more sustainable approach that I think the team can continue through September. It's going to be tough. We're going to have some tough games, especially rounding out the season, and those games are going to matter. A lot of times you finish the last, 10, 15 games, but it's either against division rivals that aren't going head-to-head, neck and neck in the division. Say the Pirates and Reds, for instance, over the last several years. If we lost to them, it didn't necessarily matter because they weren't vying for the division lead. Where when you lose to the Cubs and they're on your heels, that loss also means a win for them and they make up ground. Where you might not lose or make up any ground when you're not playing those teams, you're either going to make up a game or lose a game when you're playing the Cubs at the end of the year. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be fun to watch. I think it's going to be competitive. The Cubs are not, they're doing well. They're hanging with us, but they're not running away with anything. They've battled some injuries. They're getting a couple guys back tonight, but they lost a couple others. Baez and I think Bryant are out of the lineup. Contreras is back. Rizzo was back the other night and contributed, but he's been hurting. He's got the stiff back issue. You never know when that's going to creep up. Their pitching's been ineffective. So, I think it's a good opportunity for the Cardinals, but they're going to need to pad that lead a little bit going into those last 10 games and then take care of business against the Cubs. But I think they can do it. I think we have reason to believe that they can. Now, I always have that doubt in the back of my mind because it's the Cardinals, and for the last 3, 4, 5 years, they've been disappointing late in the season and not able to catch up to or pull away from those leading the league or leading the division rivals. So hopefully they can change this year. They look like a little bit different team to me. They look a little more competitive, a little more fiery, a little more motivated, a little more excited. And I think that matters. That confidence will come into effect late in the year. So that's pretty much all I got. I just wanted to take a quick look at what they have coming up in their schedule, who they're playing, who the Cubs are playing, what they need to do to take care of business. I did kind of start thinking a little bit about, well, what if they have a 4-game lead going into that series with the Cubs? Well, the Cubs would have to go 5-2 in those 7 games in order to make up 3 games. They'd have to go 6-1 to make up 5, and then we could hold, or whatever, right? But all that can change in the first 3 games of the series, and suddenly they're, tied or whatever. So it's not really worth trying to predict, but I do kind of like to keep an eye on the whole what if scenario. But actually, right now, what if is looking pretty good for the Cardinals. A 3-game lead is pretty sweet. So let's sustain it throughout this month and see how it turns out. Okay, well, I thank you for listening and subscribing and downloading. I appreciate it. We're about to wrap up this season here, and I'm not sure what I'll obviously be going podcasting during the playoffs if we make a playoff run. So, but along the way, it's been fun. I've kind of slowed down a little bit. The other podcast has picked up. I've been busy with that, and I've just been busy watching and observing this team playing better. So I will keep it going as long as they do. All right, thanks again. Until next time, I'm Jared, and this is the B-Fibs Almanac.